In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now time for Ghost to Ghost. We have a very special episode tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about Si Greens Pub, located here in Indianapolis off 10th Street. And tonight with me I have my co-host, Eric Kerr, our research assistant.
Hey there.
And we have our special guest, Jerry Maple, former owner of Si Greens, or co-owner of Si Greens. Say hi,
Hello
Jerry.
there.
Outstanding. And so Si Greens Pub, located 5109 East 10th Street in Indianapolis, known to have quite a bit of haunted activity. And I tell you what, we're just going to start out. I'm going to turn this over to Jerry. And Jerry, how long did you own the pub for?
I owned the pub for about 6 years. I had a friend of mine, actually a high school friend, come to me and say, hey, Psych is getting a little older and he could use a little help. And what do you think? I initially turned him down, but then I kind of thought twice about it and went ahead and went in as an owner. And we helped really expand what was going on there and really helped, I guess, rejuvenate the place. I did sell it in 2015, but the pub is still going very strong today.
Outstanding. Now, that's kind of the heartbeat of the Irvington area, as I remember.
Yes, very much so. For the northwest corner of Irvington, it is definitely, I mean, you've got that, and then across the street, you've got the Steer Inn restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Both longtime fixtures in that area. And, there are customers that really believe that size is almost theirs. I mean, they take a certain bit of ownership in what goes on inside the bar, and it's of course that's good and bad.
Oh, yeah.
But people really are very defend the size. They care for the place so very much. It's been there forever, and they've been coming in, some of them for 40, 50 years.
Wow. Now, Si, how long? Now, when did the bar originally open? He was the original owner, correct?
Yes, he was. Now, we have traced the building back to the early 1900s.
Wow.
And it's been a bar or at least a bar has been in that building for the entire time.
Okay.
Si bought the bar in 1983.
Oh, okay. I had some misinformation. I thought it was like in the 50s. So he bought it in 83. Okay.
Right, yeah, he bought it in 83. Si had been a salesman. He was selling, I believe it was plumbing products or electrical products. I forget which, but,
okay.
He is something he'd always wanted to do. So he took a chance, and it turned out very well for him.
Yeah, and if I remember straight, now correct me, because again, my research may be inaccurate, and we like I said, we had trouble finding things. I thought someone told me that he was very active in getting the Irish parade started downtown at one point.
That I cannot tell you. I do not know, but that sounds like something Si would do.
Okay.
He was very close with the Hiberian Society, and
Yes.
I'm guessing that the Hiberians probably had something to do with that.
Yes.
So I know we would sponsor the Hiberians a lot. He would always be very active with the Hiberians. So
okay.
He is correct.
Oh, outstanding. Okay. Well, again, I think I met him one time. I graduated I was class of 84 in high school, and I graduated in 83, and I started college. And actually, wasn't long after I turned 21, a buddy of mine took me there for a drink, and he actually introduced him, so I got to talk to him just a few minutes. I was enrolled in IU in the Navy commissioning program, and I was getting ready to go back to Bloomington, and I just vaguely remember him and just, the one chance meeting. Now, the time you were there, I remember I came down and played bagpipes there at least once. I can remember our band came through, and
Sure.
a lot of things, of course, very popular on St. Patrick's Day. I know John plays there now. What can you tell me about things that had occurred, and what your thoughts are on those?
Sure. Now, first, I'd like to say, you said you'd met Si once,
Yeah.
and you're talking about, 40 years ago or
Yes.
or just under, and you remember it. That's just how Si is. I mean, everyone that meets Si once remembers
Really
Si.
nice guy, really nice. And I think he even bought me a
Absolutely.
drink because he told me, he says, "You're 21, you're just now drinking?" I said, "Well, no, that's not accurate. I've been drinking, just not legally." He goes, "Well, by God, let me get you a drink." And I mean, he was just very nice. I mean, he stood out in my mind,
Yeah, absolutely. Now back onto your question. You want to know? Can you give me a little bit of direction? What are you looking for as far as stories go?
We've been told that, of course, the only thing we've found paranormal, and I knew Mary and Sean of the Paranormal 911 group that came and did the investigation. Of course, they were
Sure.
in firefighting, I being a retired fire chief, and we knew each other quite well. And actually, they called me before they went and said, "Hey, we're going to do an investigation down there." And I said, "Well, I know Jerry." And, we talked a little bit about that. And so, but they never really gave me, of course, I tried to reach out to Mary and Sean. They've retired and moved to Florida. And they gave the group up and left, and I was trying to see if I could get any of their case files, because I'm also working on a book. And the only thing I got was a picture, which is of you and the team standing there the night of the investigation. And
Okay.
if you don't mind, I'd like to use that for my book, if that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
It's a photo that was made, but anyway, that's really all we got. Now, I had heard stories that Si had passed away and that he haunted the place, and that, and then of course we got the story about the bottles blowing up at 3 a.m, and then we heard that several people had seen apparitions, but there's no written account of that.
Right. Well, Si is still very much alive and is still very
Sorry, Si.
active at the bar.
Yeah, sorry, Si.
We hope you're listening.
Yes. All right. Well, that solves that riddle in a hurry. It's a funny thing. In parapsychology, there's so many times that you find inaccurate information. And, we ran into this. There was a hotel in northern Indiana we were investigating, and there was a story of a preacher there that supposedly strayed from the flock and had an affair with a woman. He ended up hanging himself. We found out he died of old age in Michigan in perfectly good health, and we don't know about the affair, but he lived perfectly fine. And, it's incredible the things you find out that are inaccurate. So there you go. And I didn't know him personally, like I said, I met him the one time. So certainly that ghost story is no good. So how about the rest?
Okay. As far as the bottles exploding, I was not there, and you'll have to forgive me because I am going back a number of years here.
Oh, yes.
But I was not there when it happened, but I had heard about it.
Yes.
And obviously, I'm trying to think to myself, what in the hell made that happen?
Sure.
I started thinking about, various things. I never could come up with any good reason why whiskey bottles would explode. I mean, if it had been, beer bottles, okay, I can understand.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I never could come up with anything. And Ben Reisinger, he and Scott Tolan, were with a group called Do It Indy.
Yes.
And that was a group. They had a podcast and did a few different things where they would every weekend kind of get a list of things together for folks around Indianapolis to do. And so they were also longtime patrons of the bar, and they came in and they were talking about it, and they said, "Hey, I think it was Ben had a contact with Sean and Mary, I believe."
Yes.
And again, we're going back 10 years. So, or
I'm not going to hold you to that.
Yeah. So, but anyway, he said, "Hey, what do you think? Do you mind if we maybe have somebody come in and do an investigation?" I said, no, I'm sure that's just fine with me. I don't care.
Yes.
And so they set it up, and we had Sean and Mary come in and check it out. And if you want, I can go into the actual investigation.
Yeah, if you could tell me, the investigation, whatever results you remember.
Well, I do. I actually remember the investigation pretty well.
Now, were you there?
I was, yes.
Oh, cool. Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah.
See, most of our clients won't stay. They look at us and go, okay, good luck. We'll be back to lock up when you're done, and they take off. So we don't get a lot of people willing to stay, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I was there, and I can tell you that the TV show that ended up being or coming from it, the My Ghost Story episode, really had it. I think it chose the more marketable of the evidence that we had there, rather than what was probably more the stronger evidence.
Yes.
And which was a little disappointing to me, because I thought that the other stuff was a lot, in my mind, freakier and a lot, more
Welcome
interesting.
To Paranormal TV. Yeah, Mary actually, just as a side note, Mary was pushing me hard because she wanted our team to share some of the cases with them, and I wouldn't do it because they wouldn't recognize the whole team. They would take the team leaders, fly them out to California, tape it, and then bring them back, and they would tape, the scene if they were doing, an investigation, but everybody didn't get recognized, and I told her I wouldn't do it, so I always turned them down. And of course, she was coming out of a bad deal at the time with Gaslight. She'd had a setup where they were doing, I think, Paranormal Friday Night there, and then she, had started doing these. She did like 4 or 5 episodes of different areas here in Indiana. I just, matter of fact, I always tell this story. And one of my younger guys who used to be on the team, we've been in operation since 2000. We were conceived in '99 and put in operation. And at one point, there was a opening on Discovery Channel. They didn't have a group, and they were looking for people, and they sent a group down, was shooting the shift downtown with IPD, and they sent them down to shoot a pilot for us. And to consider us for the position. I'll never forget it. Of course, we didn't get it. The Kling brothers got it. But shortly thereafter, we got this invitation from the lady it was doing. She was part of the crew that operated the shift. And she says, I'm and this is when Naked and Afraid came out. And she says, I'm doing this new piece, and it's called Naked and Scared. And she says, what it is, she says, I go, I don't even like where this is going. And she told me, she says, what it is, it's paranormal investigators that are nude and investigating. I said, oh, no. I said, some of the people on my team, I don't want to see them nude, and they don't want to see me nude. I said, we're beyond that point in our life. And, and she goes, but this could be a really, of course, they're always looking for some sort of gimmick. She said, this could be a great gimmick. I said, yeah, probably could, just not with our team.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that hit the air.
Yeah, no, it never did, obviously. And she wanted to shoot, pilots. And she, we're gonna blur out like they do on the other show. I go, no, that's just not gonna work for me, honey. And she sent me out the email for a joke. I sent it out to all my group, and I remember one of her young guys, Dean. He emailed me back and said, "Can we wear shoes?" And I go, "You seriously are considering this?" It was a joke, but no, they actually came back with it. So Paranormal TV has a tendency, and the only thing I can relate it to really isn't paranormal, but we did I know Levant Perceptory, which were reenactors for the York Rite Knights Templar. They sent a crew here from History Channel to film us for a special on Knights Templar, and we filmed it down at the Scottish Rite. We spent 2 days, 8 hours apiece, filming this actual piece. And after it hit the cutting room floor, we had I think 8 minutes on there. And, and that was it. And, I mean, we spent 2 days. My back was killing me. We were wearing 50-pound gear. I can remember they keep changing the candles. And this is how bad it was. We were burning through tapers, and they keep changing them. And, I mean, we shot stuff from every angle, everything. Let's do it again. Let's do it louder. Oh, my God. And, after that, you got 8 minutes worth of work. And that's the way they do. So, unfortunately, they choose which evidence they think they like. And then you don't get any of the other. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But go ahead. What else did they find?
Well, I can tell you when we first started, we set up the bar is divided into 2 halves. You've got the pool room side, pool room / entertainment side, and you've got what we would call the pub side, which is tables and chairs, and so we set up in the pool room, and we were. You have to forgive me. What is the tool that recognizes electrical?
Oh, EMF,
Yeah.
EMF meter, EMF meter.
EMF meter, yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We were setting up those, and, you know, right away, things started lighting up. And there was a long-term patron of the bar named Leo. And Leo was, Leo actually had a TV show in Indianapolis in the early
Really?
1970s. Yes, and I don't remember the name of the show, but I think it was a children's show.
Wow.
Anyway, he was a long-term patron. He'd passed away, and it'd been long said that Leo was haunting the bar, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
So we start, hook up with someone back there, and the EMF meters start going off, and Ben Reisinger is trying to talk to whatever it is, and so if this is Leo, light the meter, and so the meter would light up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there was a series of yes or no questions asked, and then Ben says, "Well, hi, Leo," and we audibly heard the word "hi." It was like a very high, I don't know, throaty whisper.
I think they were using a spirit box. I think that part was on the show.
I saw it.
Yeah, and it came in very clear. It really did.
Yeah, that was so that's the part they used. Well, then after that, we went back over to the pub side, and we were sitting there, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but we're using some sort of divining.
Divining rods.
Yeah, divining rods. They cross and uncross.
Yes.
And so, so we're taking turns with those, and we're talking, and so then, when something got kind of interesting, we start supposedly speaking with a spirit. And I say supposedly because, to be perfectly honest, I don't. As I said on the show, after this, I was skeptical of my skepticism because going into this, I was a total skeptic.
Yes.
And now I say I'm skeptical of my skepticism, which is true.
Well, I always say the only way you can convince a skeptic is to have his first experience.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So, but anyway, through a series of questions, you're familiar with how the divining rods work, cross and uncross, and I, obviously quite a bit of time. There was someone named Jennifer, and apparently she had left the bar with a couple guys in a yellow Nova, and they ended up killing her.
Wow.
And so, we asked her what the date was, and I don't remember the exact month or day, but she said it was 1972, which apparently, according to the hunters that were there, they said, typically spirits will think it's whatever year or whatever date it was they died.
Yes.
Was what they'd said. So she said
That's
it was 1972. Yeah. So, but at any rate, I was holding the divining rods and, kind of trying to converse a little bit. And all of a sudden, I felt like a hand run up my back and up my back and across my left shoulder.
Wow.
And I almost dropped the divining rods, and I was just completely freaked out by it.
Yeah, the first time is always the worst.
Yeah. So, but everything there was, to me, was very, very real and very, very, I don't know how it was,
almost surreal.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I know that nobody was standing behind me. There was, I knew that, no person was standing behind me. I knew that nobody did that to me. And at one point, and this made me think of this right now, I was holding the divining rods, and I said, all of a sudden I was like, man, I feel kind of cold right behind me. And there was a meeting there. I said, well, yeah, there's somebody standing right behind you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll wake you up quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, outstanding.
So
Well, and some of the equipment they use, we don't use one reason or another. We were friends with a lot of groups, but some of them use equipment we stick strictly to parapsychology, so we don't use dowsing rods. We use more of a scientific approach. But yeah, I'm not going to say they're not working. It's just like psychics. There's a lot of people I know. I know several psychics, and I get along with them just fine. But we just don't use them in the program. But when you're standing there, though, I've heard many people tell me when they use dowsing rods that they get kind of an electrical charge, almost like a mild static one. Yeah, and that really. Tell you a true story, don't feel bad. One of the first times I had a spirit or entity touch me, actually, and we have a rule with our team, it's 2 and 2. We travel in together. That way, you always have someone to back up your story and to verify. I went to the restroom, of all places. I'm standing at the urinal, and all of a sudden, I swear to God, weirdest feeling in the world. It felt like somebody put a paint roller full of hot water and just ran it down my back. Scared the living hell out of me. And, oh, yeah. I mean, especially when you're staying at the urinal and you're not expecting that kind of thing. Yeah. And oh, my God. And, I came out, and I'm telling several team members what had happened. They said, well, who's in there with you? I said, well, I didn't take anybody in the bathroom. I mean, and they go, well, yeah, but the bad thing is we can't, no one was there, couldn't see if there was anything else that happened. But, they will reach out and touch. I mean, that's happened before. My former co-founder, Ed Adams, which you know well, I know we'll forget. We used to jokingly tell him before he got married that there was a female spirit at a Baltimore pub that would, if you stayed all night there in the upper room, she would attempt to have sex with you. And I said, we finally found a way to get you laid. I said, I'm just going to send you up there. And I used to make him so mad. I used to love to do it. But anyway, but no, so that really was that really your first time you really had any kind of interaction with the parasolic frame? I mean, as far as goes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now,
yeah, absolutely. But as we're talking, a lot of these details are starting to tumble back to me, and
I was kind of hoping that would be the way of it.
Yeah, and the medium, when we first walked in, they brought on their carrying their equipment, and the medium just taking a walk around.
Yes.
And we hadn't told him anything, and he walks over to the shelf where the whiskey bottles were, and he said, "Something happened here. Something happened right here."
Mm-hmm.
He said I feel so there was some anger here of some sort.
Yes.
And then he also said that as soon as he walked in, he saw a black spirit take off in the basement.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we did go down there a little bit, and he's like, "Yeah," he said, "there's a black spirit hiding under the stairwell right now from me."
Any idea? Did he ever pick up anything that could give you a clue to who that might have been, or if it was a?
No.
Okay,
no.
Just curious. Yeah, I'm real curious about the gal that was murdered in. A yellow Nova. I grew up in the 70s, and a buddy of mine, which wouldn't have been that early, but he drove a yellow Nova. We built that thing up. I can remember it very well. And, that was not an unusual color at that time for Novas, but he had a 74, I think, and because we painted it in the body shop or at Warren Central. But
I had a 70 Nova.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, my God, they were nice. He had the Hearst shifter. We had a hell of a time because I'll never forget it. He wanted a Hearst professional shifter put in, so we cut this big hole in the floorboard. Mr. Benning, the shop mechanic, came over, and he looks at me and he goes, "What the hell are you installing?" I go, "Well, we're putting a, professional Hearst shifter. We paid quite a bit for this." He says, "That's not what I'm talking about." He says, "You cut a big enough hole, you can take out the damn transmission." He says, "You ever think about cutting a smaller hole?" He says, "How are you going to get a boot to cover that up?" And we're both standing there going, "Oh, yeah, there is that." And I mean, we actually had to I'll never forget, we had to go over to Gunnerman Speed Shop and pick up this boot that was custom ordered for a semi because we cut too big a hole. And we didn't think about that at the time. And I'll never forget that. We're young, we were starting out. But oh, God, yeah, I mean, I used to love to work on it, and it certainly spurred me into my cars. But, well, now, other than now, did you have anything else in the basement other than the black entity, the, dark entity that was under the stairs?
I don't remember, to be honest. I think
that's fine.
For some reason, I'm thinking he said there were several things down there, but I may just be imagining that right now.
Okay.
It seems like he had said, though, there were several things there.
All right.
Jerry, I have a question. So,
Yes.
talking about the Black Spirit, is there
Uh-huh.
anybody who had actually seen anything that could have been considered a ghost or an apparition or anything like that? Is there any history with that?
There is a little bit, a lot of edge of vision type things,
Yes.
where you see something at this, at your periphery, and then you turn and it's gone. A lot of that kind of stuff. I would see some of those things from time to time. But a lot of times the closing bartenders would talk about it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
we call those shadow
there.
figures. They appear out of the peripheral. You really don't get a lot of detail on what they look like. If it's a he or she, you see it move, just enough to trigger your ability to see it, but then it's gone before you can get a good look at it.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is,
that's
looking
exactly
at the
right.
history of the bar, you said it's been in existence in its current form for like 40 years,
Give or take.
roughly.
Yeah, it's been Si Greens for 42 years now.
Okay.
What do you know about the history before that? Because I think you said that it had been a bar since the early 1900s. Is there anything you know about that property where there might be attachments?
Well, I would think so. I mean, I don't know. I think we and again, going back several years here, but I think we had it back to a bar as early as 1915. Now, the building is actually there's 5 different spaces in that building. When I had size, we were the only space that was occupied. But at one time, there was a restaurant, McLaughlner's Pub, which is the forerunner of both Laughlner's and MCL Cafeteria.
Yep, I remember.
And I said McLaughlner's Cafeteria, not McLaughlner's Pub.
Yeah.
McLaughlner's Cafeteria. There's been bakeries. There's been various things.
And we picked up some different things in there that were there. We even picked up an actual shop, a pipe shop, back before smoke shops are everywhere now. But back then there was a pipe shop actually in one of the buildings at one time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and we found that one. That was a little bit in the research. I remember that coming up. And that was not uncommon. 10th Street, you go down Arlington to 10th Street, they had those little strip buildings that, had offices in them. And a lot of times they changed hands pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
And Jerry, you grew up in the area, didn't you?
I did not. No, I grew up out west, out in Monrovia.
I didn't know. I knew I grew up in the area, and I remember now the biggest trademark there when I was a kid in high school, of course, was the Dungeon. That was across the street. And I always found it so ironic they opened a young girls' dance studio next to it. And I remember me and Ed sitting out there one night taking the irony all in. But, yeah, the Dungeon was the worst strip bar. There was nastiest strip bar in town. And a lot of kids would have to try to break into a strip bar. Yeah, not this one. They'd let you in, no problem. But yeah, it was not the most safe. It was a big letdown for me because it was the first strip bar I'd ever seen. I had a lot more envision. It's like the first time you ever go to a nude beach. Yeah, that's a life changer. It's not what you think. Yeah, and it was one of those kind of things. But they also had now. I think Stoney's has been there for quite some time, as well as the Steer Inn. Which is
Absolutely,
a liquor store.
Yeah.
Good people. I used to buy off of them when me and Ed shared a house together. We rented together for quite some time down there, right off of the main strip of Washington Street. Stoney's was always amusing. Good people, but I know there's been a lot of things. Loftner's Restaurant was a kind of like an MCL chain for Eric. Eric has not.
I'm not from here.
No, and it was they got, and I ate there many times. It was an after church thing. They'd always load up and go Loftner's, Gray's, and one of those kind of things. Pose. One of the things I remember vividly was my daughter threw up on the it was a cafeteria style dining line. She puked. That cleared a lot of customers out. She was probably 6 or 7.
Sure.
You didn't know she was sick. Yeah, we took her there after church, and she, we wait to 3 turns to get up to the main line, and she upchucks. And that was the most memorable. But they ended up shutting it down. It used to sit on Washington Street at Franklin. It sat behind what is now, there's a medical building there, community hospital and medical building. But that used to be Loftner's, one of Loftner's cafeterias. And he got busted for having child porn. And that's what put him out of business. They found out he had child porn on the computer, and it actually, within 2 weeks, shut down the entire Loftner cafeteria. It was bad.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. What happened was, and I don't know the exact facts, so I can't be held to this, but the way I understand it is somehow or another, either he passed or something, and they got looking at the computers, found it, made it out to the news, shut down because Loftner's had very good food, I'll tell you what. I remember,
absolutely.
Oh, it was great. And I mean, we used to eat there a lot because it was a lot closer than Gray's or Poe's or, any of the other cafeterias. Cafeteria dining was very popular in the late 70s, early 80s, and Sherwood Club was popular. I remember we went there. But, that's what happened. And actually, it came from the two partners. And I knew that it had started down there. And the other partner had a cafeteria because originally Eastgate, which is now no longer a mall, we call it The Rock in SEMA. But, and it's a mess. But anyway, we won't get into that. That's a whole conspiracy theory all on its own. But the Rock, Eastgate was a mall, small mall, and that was very popular. Had Sears while I was growing up, Blocks, Ayers, all these different big stores. But it wasn't open. It wasn't a mall back then. It was all open air. It was connected by sidewalks. Right. They closed it, but one of the cafeterias in there, that was the other partner that opened Loftner's. He had that cafeteria, is the way I was told. Now, I believe that to be accurate. So, I mean, and the thing about Irvington, and I think Jerry agree, there's a lot of very tight-knit people there, like the patrons that come in the Si Greens. They've been there forever. They've grown up in that area. They love that area. And, Ed, I think, actually grew up in Brazil, but he always loved it the time we lived there. And, I mean, I've seen a lot of changes there over the years. I mean, I grew up there. I remember shopping in Irvington Plaza. Now you wouldn't even walk in Irvington Plaza. I mean, especially after night. And, the area's changed. It's got better. It's got worse. I think it's kind of on a bell curve. But Si Greens has been one place that has stayed for years and really stayed in. There was another Irish pub that was actually, there was a shooting in it. It was down, it's now a fence company or bricklaying company. It's south of you.
They do both, yeah.
They both, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, because I know I actually spoke on that at a conference one time, and that was one bar that was real popular and supposedly had a spirit. I called them. They assured me they were unaware of any ghosts, and they didn't really want me there, so we kind of let it go with that, which happens. But I'm sorry, we got kind of diverted there. But can you remember anything else that the night of the investigation that came through?
Well,
if you can't,
had
that's
nothing
okay.
to do with the investigation itself, but it's funny because it was probably 4 a.m. or so, and all of a sudden we heard a bunch of knocking on the windows.
Oh, really?
Like,
the ones out front by 10th Street?
Someone was knocking. Yeah, and so Ben and I go out there, and there was a couple guys standing out there and like, hey, we heard you guys are filming for my ghost story in there. Can we meet some of the people? And I'm like, no, we're right in the middle of this, and we can't do it. Well, can we get your autograph? So Ben and I both scribbled our autographs.
Well,
and just
hey,
wrote
there you go. Yeah.
Just wrote crew on that.
Well, I tell you what, you're missing out because at the Paracons, and actually we just here a while back, we got asked for a group photo autographed, and hell, I've never had anybody ask us for that. But when you go to the Paracons, all the guys, the TV paranormal people, they all sell their photograph, and and I always, there's several. Because we're attached with several of these people, we know them really well, and I always have to laugh because they all have their own TV shows, and it's kind of funny because they will sell their picture, and I always liked Dave Schrader's one. I always like to pick on. I like to critique his photograph all the time because he comes up with new ones occasionally. He didn't have one last year when we were up there, but we go up there, and it's just kind of fun. But you should have told him, hey, these are $5 a piece, and here's the CD. You could have fit right in with us, because if you don't have a book, you sell your picture, until you get books. Then you sell your picture and books,
Well, we just wanted to get them out of the house.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but
if you ever
stood there and looked in the windows for a while, but then they moved on. But
Well, that's the bad thing. I never try to ever let people know where I'm going to be on an investigation, even on this podcast. I mean, of course, a lot of times we've been on the air 4 years, so a lot of times they may pull up something from long ago. But, I because of that very reason. And, I always tell people we keep our, we do a paranormal university master class, which is actually 2 different courses, and you get to participate in a live investigation. We never give out the investigation site to the day before, because I've had times where it got out, and then we get people that show up in the parking lot that don't belong. And, it makes for a problem. And we do a lot of private investigations. You'd be surprised how many Masonic lodges I've investigated, but we don't give out information because we don't publish those because of privacy, no different than a private residence. And we've I think the best one, I've never been asked to investigate a strip club. I'm waiting on that one. I just never have yet. And, it's kind of disappointing. But anyway.
They have spirits, unfortunately. They're in a bottle.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably not the type. Not the dancing type, the roaming type. But anyway, no. I actually was asked our team was asked to investigate a theatrical haunted house for Halloween. And they brought us out one time. And you talk about awkward, because they powered down all the equipment, but still standing there. And you go around the corner and run into the Wolfman once, and oh my God, it's a whole different program. But we actually did one of those once, but many years ago. But anyway, so at the end of the night, what was your takeaway from the investigation? What did you think?
Well, by the time everybody wrapped up and got all the equipment, loaded out, and I got everything kind of closed up, and Ben and I kind of sat down and had a beer and just looked at each other, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. So
we do the same thing, but it's usually at Denny's. We usually meet up, somewhere off-site, and then we all sit down and wait how long. We make bets on how long before the waitress asks us, since we're all wearing matching shirts, if we're a paranormal team, But go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, I got home about 6 o'clock, and I just laid in bed and just kind of, wow, that was freaky. And just kind of laid there and kind of tried to kind of just replay everything that had happened. It was, as I said before, I was a total skeptic. So, I had to kind of rethink some things and say, okay, I'm still not, 100% convinced, but I know what I saw was real and what I felt was real. So
and that makes a difference.
Something's going on. Yeah.
If you know it's real, you know what's happening. A lot of people don't realize that when you have your first experience, it is surreal to the point that you know what's going on. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You'll know immediately that's what's happening. So, and that's not, people. The first one, I'm going to share this with you real quick because I think it's a good anecdote. We were having, this happened probably 8 years ago, we were having a master class, a Paranormal University master class, and a couple showed up. Oddly enough, he was actually in the Masonic Order, and I knew him, and he showed up with his lady friend they were engaged. And they came into the site we were at, and he told me, he says, look, I'm going to level with you. He says, I don't believe in any of this shit. I think it's all just BS. He says, but I'm going to be respectful. I won't be a problem. I'll just sit here. He said, because I was told hang on just a minute, Jerry. We're going to take a real quick break. All right, folks, we're back from the break, and we're with Jerry Maple. We're still talking a bit about Si Greens. So, okay, so, you're having the beer with Ben, and you kind of take it all in. I mean, like I said, I started to tell you the story. This guy come in, and they sat down together, and, and the class is very long. It's a regular college level, 3 credit. We don't give college credit. I want to clear that up, but it's like that. It's a very long course, and it ends in a live investigation. So we got turned with investigation as the night started through, and we start at like 6 in the evening, we go to 4 in the morning. So it's a long, long draw. One of my guys come by and says, hey, that couple you were talking to in the class? He says, the big tall guy, and I mean, this guy was 6'4", 6'5". He said he went soaring out of here like his ass is on fire, and he's out in the car. And we weren't in the best of areas. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I don't know. He was moving way too fast for me to ask. So I walk out to the car. I knock on the window, he rolls window down. I said, hey, are you okay? And he says, yeah, I'm fine. He says, but I'm not going back in the building. I said, you don't mind me asking why, do you? And he says, no, I don't mind. He said, we were talking to what we thought was a child spirit. He says, I swear to God to you, God is my witness. He said, a little child grabbed my hand. And I said, how long did you feel it? He said, I don't know. That's when I started running. And he said, I just left the group in a hurry and went to the car. And he says, I'm not coming back in. He said, but I'll tell you what. He says, I'll never make fun of you guys. And that was it. That was the end of that. So I always tell people, the only way to convert a skeptic is to let them have their first experience. Skeptics that don't believe will never believe. You can't say anything that's going to convince them. They have to have some sort of life-altering, and it doesn't always, my chief of staff always says he's very skeptic, and he says, we have skeptics on our team. You can't really have a good team that's subjective without some skeptics. And he always says, I'm looking for the blind light of the obvious. And, sometimes that's just, not something you can get. And so, anyway, long story short, that's kind of, how we look at this. Most skeptics have to have something that happens that makes them, who they are. So, and it also convinces them of whether, and some people are at that point, it's like go fever. They have to keep getting involved and finding out more things. And other ones are just, hey, that's fine. I got to experience it. That's all the more I want. And, it always affects people in different ways. But, so after the investigation, I know that, they flew you out, they interviewed you, and they brought you back. After it happened, did any of the patrons or anybody else come to you and say, hey, I didn't get to tell you, but this happened or that happened before?
Yes, we heard a lot of that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff from patrons, from bartenders that hadn't said anything yet. We heard a lot of things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, kind of wondered, is there anything in particular that stood out in your mind?
No, I can't say. And again, I'm sure there were at the time, but it's going back quite a while, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. But I know a lot of the seeing things in your periphery and turning that's gone, and things being in different places. Like the bartender would put something down and go to the bathroom and come back and be moved.
Gone. Yeah. Okay.
So the first thing I go back to is their attachment to the building or the land. So I grew up in a house that we found out was built on top, and the whole subdivision really was built on top of an Indian burial mound in Florida.
Oh, nice.
And so my first my first paranormal experience had to do with spirits rocking our rocking chairs. And you knew they were there. You couldn't see them, but you could see the result of what they're doing. So because I'm not from this area, I'm ignorant toward the history, I suppose. Was there any kind of business in that area that would cause attachment, like a funeral parlor or something? Because they used to be very numerous, I know.
No, yeah, well, they were, and there's one down on Washington Street, but I don't know.
I would say, I don't know of any in that immediate area.
No, even because the other way goes over to Arlington, and there was a lot of things. The Arlington Theater, hell, every movie I saw as a kid, I saw in the Arlington Theater because it was close. There was no funeral parlors there. Going back the other way goes back to Sherman, and there's nothing there. There on Washington Street, there is a funeral parlor in those between Sherman and English. I don't remember the name of it. It's not one of Pierre's, St. Pierre's. It's another one, but I don't recall the name. It's been there for quite some time, but not in the 70s.
Gotcha.
It wasn't there in the 70s. So.
Well, I'm thinking further back. So my family's from Terre Haute, and my mom's side of the family. And for example, there's like 3 or 4 funeral homes now, but back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were like a dozen and a half. So I'm thinking attachment to the land potentially. I guess I'm trying to figure out what it may have been before, and that could be causing spirits.
There's so many things, and the problem is when you go through the Indiana Historical Society, you can get some, but there's a lot of stuff. I'll tell you what, how I found out about the pipe shop was a photograph. And the bad thing is I've learned this. I learned this in Freemasonry in the Shrine. If you talk to the older guys, they're a wealth of information, and most of them will give up anything you want to talk about. I remember there was one past potentate in the Shrine that I got information on I didn't know about, and he's near death unfortunately now, but he was a great wealth of information.
Yeah,
and sometimes you get it from the weirdest ways. I know you being our research assistant and Jennifer researching, you find stuff in a weird manner. And we had a case one time down south, and a gentleman told me across the road that the railroad used to run through. It's a little podunk down. He said there was a railroad ran through there, and they had shoved a locomotive engine over into the pond. And I'm going, well, why would they do that? He goes, well, it was an older one. They started switching to diesel engines, and it was just left there, and they finally had to get rid of it, and there was an argument. So what they did is they just shoved it in this pond. I thought, I hate to call bullshit, but it does sound. It turned out we found the newspaper article. In this pond exists a locomotive. And, I guess they used to let diving instructors come down and take classes down. It's not a very deep pond. I mean, we're talking 80 feet. But they shoved a locomotive in it. It's weird how you come across that kind of information.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been able to find it because the way it was listed, it never gave anything about the town until you looked up locomotive. And, we just found it because some old guy remembered it. And
well, the history is only as good as people have recorded it. So
exactly.
Now we're at a point where the historical societies didn't leave a lot of good information.
Yes.
And the people who could corroborate it have passed away.
Yeah,
So-
and that's the problem.
Sure.
Before my dad died, we had tons and tons of photos of the family. I sat down with him. He loved to do it, and I went through and wrote on the back who each person was. 'Cause I knew once he left, we would never know because I didn't know these folks.
Right.
I mean, these are old 1920s, 1930s photographs, and he just rattled them right off. So I got them all recorded and scanned before that happened. But that's the bad thing. Once they're gone, they're gone. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear Si is alive. I hate to, because like I said, that was just something that I had heard. So thank God that is not the case. So now, I'm not going to ask you to name any names because I don't want you doing that. But do you know the owners now?
Oh yeah, I do. It's actually it's still Si.
Oh, okay.
And the buddy that got me involved.
Oh, okay,
I sold my shares back to my buddy.
Oh, okay. But Si is now, he's an owner as well still.
Yes, he's still an owner.
Oh,
so
cool,
yes,
cool,
has been the whole time.
Okay,
so
well, that's
he just brought on a
outstanding.
couple partners.
Well, we talked about that, and I said the only bad thing is, it's like I know Carol and Hal Yegi with Slippery Noodle. The problem is getting into these places to investigate them because their money making is Friday and Saturday nights, and that's
Right.
when they make their money. And you about have to shut it down on a Wednesday at like midnight and investigate for 3 or 4 hours. It's very hard to do. And we were talking about we're re-looking at some sites to go back through and reinvestigate. We get quite a bit in. We have a hotline, and we jokingly talk about that all the time. The calls we get, but we've got a case we're working right now. But we do look at that. And Jerry, I can't thank you enough. I know it's Sunday night. I know you were awful busy. You've got a lot going on in your life, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to
Sure.
us. Eric, do you have any more
No
questions
problem.
for Jerry? I don't.
No, I just appreciate your time and your wealth of knowledge, and look forward to meeting you face to face.
Yep, and I'm going to go ahead and sign us off. We're getting ready for the ghost story of the day. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the ghost story of the day with Heather Lawson.
This is No Sanctuary from Cursed in New England, More Stories of Damned Yankees by Joseph A. Citro. Due to its ghastly nature, the next part of the story is rarely told. Even Kenneth Roberts deleted the atrocity from his comprehensive historical novel, Northwest Passage. A small group of terrified Abenakis scrambled for the church with the bloodthirsty Rangers in pursuit. Inside the chapel, candles were burning, lending a false sensation of tranquility. But there was to be no sanctuary. Father Verot, the Jesuit priest, interposed himself between the savage Englishmen and the caring Indians. For a moment, all was still as the Rangers gawked, surprised at the treasures within the humble church. Golden candlesticks, silver plates, bejeweled chalices. But the gem that arrested all eyes was a solid silver statue of the Madonna. Finally, Ranger Benjamin Bradley stepped forward eye to eye with the priest. "Madman," Father Verot said, "for the sake of him on the cross, stay your hands. This is the house of God." Benjamin Bradley hesitated only briefly. Outside cries and gunshots filled the night. The thud of tomahawks beat an irregular rhythm as the Rangers raised his musket. "Yield, Papist, and you shall have good quarter." The Jesuit priest took the host from a golden chalice on the altar. With both hands he lifted the sacred wafer above his head as if it were a shield. And then in a voice those who heard it would long remember, he commanded, "To your knees, monsters, to your knees." Ranger Bradley sneered and pulled the trigger. the holy man fell among the carrying Abenakis. A volley of rifle fire followed, slaughtering the Indians and filling the tiny church with blood.
Thanks for listening to Ghost to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoGhost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.